William Hull was the governor of Michigan Territory and a Revolutionary War veteran. He commanded a force of 300 regulars and 1,500 Ohio militiamen. They made their way through Indian Territory to Detroit. His orders were to cross over to the Canadian side and capture Fort Malden. The Canadian commanders across from Detroit considered their forces too weak to oppose the American forces, so they pulled back to Armsburg and to Fort Sandburg. The American forces crossed the river on July 12th and met with no opposition as they occupied Sandwich. A force of 280, under the command of Lewis Cass, reached the Aucanard River near Fort Malden and captured a bridge leading over the river. When Cass asked for reinforcements and instructions on holding the bridge, he was told it was up to his discretion. He burned the bridge, which was the best route to attack Malden. While Cass was advancing towards Malden, Hull was becoming increasingly concerned about his own supply lines. He called for supplies and reinforcements from Ohio, and Governor Meigs put together a force of 195 Ohio militia with supplies for the journey. Tecumseh's Indians cut the supply road over at River Basin, 33 miles from Detroit. Major Thomas Horne, an Ohioan, in the meantime led a force of 150 to meet them, but they were ambushed by a small force of Tecumseh soldiers and forced to withdraw back to Detroit. Hull then sent 450 men under Colonel James Miller to relieve the trapped Ohioan supply column. They advanced to the Indian village of Manguagan, where they met a force of 150 British and plus some number of Indians. At first the Americans broke through the British lines, but after the British established a second line, the Americans dug in. After 2 days, they were ordered back to Detroit. In the meantime, Hull was preparing to attack Fort Malden, held by only 300 soldiers. Hull prepared siege cannon, but found out they were too heavy to make it to cross the bridge to get into position. Without the cannon, Hull decided there would be no attack. When he heard word that the British reinforcements were on the way, he withdrew his forces back across the Detroit River. On the evening of August 13th, Hull ordered 300 men to make an roundabout march to relieve the Ohioan supply mission. In the meantime, the British, under the command of General Brock, placed cannons on the Canadian side opposite Detroit. Brock then demanded Detroit's surrender. Hull refused, but made not one attempt to dislodge the British forces. Instead, he concentrated on his fears that there would be an Indian attack, thus spreading his forces too thinly. The British then sent a force across the river at Spring Wells. The British forces then approached the fort at Detroit and demanded Hull's surrender. To the surprise of the British, Hull agreed to surrender the American force without a fight.